Hello everybody and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. Shalom Avorach. Welcome to my friends to the daily dose of Daf Yomi. I'm the host and here to unravel the profound wisdom of the Talmud one page at a time. Today we're diving into Makkos Daf 5a, a page brimming with critical legal analysis and moral depth. Pay close attention as this Daf teaches us lessons on truth, evidence, and the very nature of justice. Key points and summary of the Daf. This Daf focuses on the laws surrounding Edim Zomimim, conspiring witnesses, the mitzvah of Kasha Zamim. The central discussion revolves around the verse Vayatzitem lo Kasha Zaman le'achiv, and you shall do to him as he conspired to do to his brother. The Talmud explores when this punishment inflicting the consequences the witnesses sought to impose is applied. The critical moment, we learn that the conspiring witnesses are punished only if their plot is exposed before the court's sentence is actually carried out. If the execution or the financial transfer they conspired to bring about already occurred, they are exempt from the Ka'asher Zamim punishment, and instead they receive the standard punishment for false testimony, usually lashes. It was shown in the early commentators like Rashi and Tosfot intensely debate the exact nature of this execution and the required sequence of events to trigger the exemption. The nature of conspiracy. The Daf discusses whether Edim Zomimim are considered equivalent to ordinary witnesses regarding the need for Hadra'ah, a formal warning before committing a sin. The conclusion is that they are not treated like typical transgressors, as sin is purely a matter of legal evidence. So let's actually dive into the text. The Gemara asks, and concerning the rabbis, what do they derive from that verse? The Gemara answers, that verse is necessary according to the rabbis for the requirement of proclamation. What does that mean? Hachzar Roza. A court that sentenced conspiring witnesses' rights and sends to every city a proclamation that so and so testify, will render conspiring witnesses and receive such and such a punishment, i.e. execution, national, monetary payment. That's the Rambam says the Sovtim, Hilchat Eidos 18:7 and Hilchat Mamrim 3:8. When the witnesses are taken to the execution, there is a mitzvah for the court to publicly proclaim the transgression for which they are being punished, in order to deter others from committing the same transgression. And Rabbi Meir derives the requirement of the proclamation from the phrase in that verse, shall hear and fear. The prohibition derived from the phrase, and shall not continue to perform any more evil. Mishnah. When punishing conspiring witnesses based on the verse, as he conspired to do to his brother in Deuteronomy 19:19, one divides the punishment of money among them, but does not divide the punishment of lashes among them. Each received 39 lashes. So what's the footnote? Meshal shin b'mamon ve'meshal shin b'makkos. If witnesses testify that a person owed money to another, were rendered conspiring witnesses. The conspiring witnesses divide equally between them the payment owed to the defendant. If their testimony resulted in the liability to receive lashes, each one receives 39 lashes, or the number of lashes that he can withstand. And that's in the Rambam Sefer Shovtim, Hilchat 18:1, Torah and Choshen Mishpat 38. The Mishnah writes, how so? If the witnesses testified about someone that he owed another person 200 dinars, and then they were found to be conspiring witnesses, the witnesses divide the sum among them and pay a total of 200 dinars. But if they testified about someone that he was liable to receive 40 lashes, and then they were found to be conspiring witnesses, each and every one of the witnesses received 40 lashes. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters, i.e. that the witnesses do not divide the punishment of lashes among them derived? Abai said wicked from Deuteronomy 25:2 is stated in regard to those liable to receive lashes, and wicked, Numbers 35:31, is stated in regard to those liable to receive a court-imposed death penalty. Just as there with regard to those sentenced to be executed there is no partial death penalty, so to here with regard to those liable to receive lashes, there is no partial administering of lashes. Rabbi said the reason the fulfillment of lashes is not divided is that we require fulfillment of the verse, and he conspired to do to his brother, Deuteronomy 19:19, and were the conspiring witnesses to receive fewer than 39 lashes, the verse should not be fulfilled. The Gemara asks, if so, in the case of money too, one should not divide the sum between them, as each sought to cause the defendant loss of the entire sum. The Gemara answers, sums of money paid by witnesses can combine, as the person against whom they testified received the entire sum, that they sought to cause him to lose. The last statement says the witnesses cannot combine. And now we're moving to the next Mishnah. In ha'edin na'asim zomim ad sheyazimu ad azman. Witnesses are not rendered conspiring witnesses until the witnesses come to render themselves conspiring impeach the witnesses themselves and not merely their testimony. Ad sheyazimu ad azman. Witnesses are not rendered conspiring witnesses if the testimony is contradicted by other witnesses. E.g., if the second set testifies that the perpetrator or the victim was with him elsewhere at that time. They are rendered conspiring witnesses only by testimony that addresses the witnesses themselves. E.g., if the second set testifies that the first set was with them elsewhere at the time that they claim to have witnessed the incident. Rambam Sefer Shoftim Hilchot Eidut 18:2 Choshen Mitzvah 38. In other words, the testimony must address the witnesses and not their testimony. See Rashi Tosfot. This halacha is based on the fact that if a second set of witnesses testifies that the incident did not occur in the manner described by the first, this is merely a case of two contradictory testimonies regarding the same event. Where both testimonies are disregarded, first set of witnesses are thereby not rendered conspiring witnesses. By contrast, if the second set of witnesses testifies that in the first set you were with us, the second set of witnesses is not addressing the event at all, as they are not required to know whether the victim was killed and when the incident transpired. Rather, they are providing unchallenged testimony with regard to the first set of witnesses who became defendants. If a second set of witnesses testify that the first set of witnesses violated prohibition, e.g. committed murder, the first set of witnesses would not be deemed credible to claim we did not kill him. In this case, too, when the second set of witnesses testified that the first set of witnesses could have not witnessed the incident because they were with them elsewhere, the first set of witnesses is not deemed credible to contradict them. Rambam's commentary on the Torah, Pnei Yeshua, and Abba Vanel's commentary on the Torah. How so? A set of witnesses said, we testify with regard to a man called so-and-so that he killed a person, and they tested the precise time and place that the murder took place. Then the second set of witnesses came to the court and said, how can you testify about this event? This person who you was killed, or this person who was killed was with us, i.e. with the second set of witnesses on that day in such and such a place, which is not located and identified by the first set of witnesses. In that case, though the second set of witnesses contradicted the testimony of the first, these witnesses are not rendered conspiring witnesses. But if the second set of witnesses came to court and said to them, how can you testify about that event? You were with us on a day in such and such a place. In this case, if these first witnesses are rendered conspiring witnesses and executed on the basis of their, i.e. the second set's testimony. If the other witnesses, a third set, came and corroborated the testimony of the first set of witnesses, the second set of witnesses testified that this third set of witnesses was also with them elsewhere that day and rendered them conspiring witnesses. And similarly, if yet other witnesses, i.e. a fourth set, came, corroborated the testimony of the first set of witnesses, and the second set rendered them conspiring witnesses. Those commentaries, Rashi, Rabbeinu, Hanani, Rif, and the Rambam explain that one set of witnesses came and testified with regard to a certain incident, and the second set came and rendered them conspiring witnesses. The third set of witnesses came and corroborated the testimony of the first set, and the second set came and rendered them conspiring witnesses, claiming that they too were with them elsewhere. The second set proceeds to render all subsequent sets of witnesses and corroborate the testimony of the first set conspiring witnesses. By contrast, the Ramban adopts the explanation of the Gaonim, which is cited and rejected by the Rif. The mission is referring to a series of witnesses, each rendering the previous set conspiring witnesses. The Ramban writes that this explanation is supported by a bright and a Tosefta that addresses a case of that kind. The fact that the testimony of the second set is deemed credible is a Torah decree. Even if the first set consisted of 100 witnesses, and 2 witnesses came and testified that all 100 were with them elsewhere at the time, the testimony of the latter is deemed credible. This is the case even if those were 100 witnesses testified as 50 set of witnesses, who testified in succession according to the written interpretation of the Mishnah. The Rambam writes that if a set of witnesses testifies that Reuben killed Shimon, and another set of witnesses rendered the first set conspiring witnesses, the first set of witnesses are to be executed and the Reuben is spared. If a third set renders the second set conspiring witnesses, the second set and Reuben are to be executed, and the first set is spared. If a fourth set renders the third set conspiring witnesses, the third set and the first set are to be executed and ruined, and the second set are spared. This is the procedure even if 100 sets come to court and provide alternating testimony in accordance to the interpretation of the mission and the Tosefta by the Gaonim. Rambam say V'shem Hilchot Eidah 18:3-25-6, Torah Mishpat 38. Even 100 sets of witnesses were all rendered conspiring witnesses by the same set of second set of witnesses, all of them executed on the basis of their testimony, as the authority of two witnesses equivalent to the authority of numerous witnesses. Rabbi Yehuda says, this situation where a witness renders all the others conspiring witnesses is a conspiracy, is tatus. There are many variants of this term and many explanations regarding its precise meaning. Apparently, the primary version of the term is tatus is from the Greek stasis, which has many connotations. In this context, it means faction of conspirators, conspiracy or plot. As there is no room for suspicion that they simply decided to impeach all witnesses who offer that testimony. It is only the first set of witnesses alone that is executed. With regard to halacha, witnesses are rendered conspiring witnesses only if the second set testifies that the first set was with them elsewhere at that time, and not if they directly contradict the testimony of the first set. The Gemara asked where these matters derive. Rav Adda said it is derived from a verse, as the verse states with regard to conspiring witnesses, and the witness is a false witness, and he testified falsely against his brother in Deuteronomy 19:18, indicating that they are not rendered conspiring witnesses until the body of the testimony is rendered false. And the testimony with regard to the actual witnesses was proven wrong, and they were not there at the time of the event in question. The school of Rabbi Shmuel taught a different source for this halacha. It is stated in that passage, if an unrighteous witness rise up against any man to bear perverted witness against in Deuteronomy 19:16, indicating that the witnesses are not rendered conspiring witnesses until the body of the testimony is rendered perverted, but not through contradiction of any aspect of the testimony. Rabbi said, two witnesses came and said, so-and-so killed a person to the east of the building, the Bira. A Bira is a parallel term in Syrian, means fortified city. The word has different connotations in biblical Hebrew and in rabbinic Hebrew. Here, the reference is to a large building. In a case where two witnesses testified that one person killed another east of a building, and the other witnesses came and testified that the first that was with them to the west of the building, if there's a vantage point from which the east side can be viewed from the west side, the first witnesses are not conspiring witnesses. If there's no vantage point from which that view is possible, they are conspiring witnesses, and one does not speculate that perhaps the vision is superior to that of anyone else. And Rambam say, V'shem Hilchot Eidah 91, Torah Mishpat 38. And two other witnesses came to court and said to the first set, but were you not with us to the west of the building at that time? How can you testify to the incident of spider on the other side of the building? We see if when people are standing to the west of the building, they see to the east of the building, these witnesses are not conspiring witnesses. If it's not possible to see from one side of the building to the other, witnesses are conspiring witnesses. The Gemara asks, isn't that obvious? The Gemara answers, unless you say, let's be concerned about the possibility that these witnesses have particularly good eyesight. Nahor Bira, good eyesight, a distance from which an average person who is not nearsighted can discern items is relatively static. As in the case of with the other senses, there are exceptional individuals who clearly have greater visual acuity than most. Nevertheless, Gemara explains, one does not take these exceptional people into account, but rather bases the estimate on the ability of typical people, especially because it is unlikely that both witnesses happen to have exceptional vision and were able to see that far despite a typical person being unable to see that far. Therefore, Rava teaches us that one does not take that possibility into account. And Rava says, if two witnesses came and said, so-and-so killed a person in the morning on Sunday, two witnesses testified that one person killed another in Jerusalem, and a second set testified that the first set was with them in Lod that evening. One observed that whether it is possible at all to reach Lod from Jerusalem within that period of time, even if it is possible only on horseback. If it is possible, the first set of witnesses are not conspiring witnesses. If not, they are conspiring witnesses, and one does not speculate that perhaps they rode a uniquely fast horse. If two witnesses said that one person killed another in a certain place on Sunday, and the two others testified that the first set was with them elsewhere on that day, but that person killed the other on the following day, or even if they testified that he killed the other person 7 days later and 7 days earlier, both the killing and the first set of witnesses are executed. Since the killer had not yet been sentenced at the time of the testimony of the first set of witnesses, even though he had already committed the murder, they are considered conspiring witnesses. Now, it's in the Ram Sefer Shoftim, Hilchot Eidah, 91-2, Torah Nechosh Mishpat 38. The other two witnesses came to court and said to the first set, "In the evening on Sunday you were with us in Nahadia. We see if one is able to travel from Surah to Nahadia from morning until evening, they are not conspiring witnesses, as conceivably they could have witnessed the murder in Surah and traveled to Nahadia by evening. If it is not possible to travel that distance in that period of time, they are conspiring witnesses." The Gemara asks, "Is it that obvious?" The Gemara answers, "Lest you say, let us be concerned about the possibility that these witnesses travelled on a flying camel." Gamla Palcha. There are several breeds of camel used for different purposes. Most camels are employed as beasts of burden as they walk slowly. Raising camels are capable of running fast, like a galloping horse for a extended period. Apparently, the term flying camel refers to a camel of this sort. I won so quickly that it enabled them to traverse a distance faster than a typical person. Therefore, Rava teaches that one need not take that possibility into account. And Rava says, if two witnesses came and said, "On Sunday so-and-so killed a person," and two other witnesses came and said, "You were with us on Sunday," but on Monday that same so-and-so killed that same person. Moreover, even if the second set of witnesses said, "On Shabbat Eve, so-and-so killed that same person," the first set of witnesses executed is by the fact that the person about whom they testify was liable to be executed without their testimony. The reason that they are liable is that at the time they testified, inspiring to have him executed by the court, the man was not yet liable for execution by the court. We might ask, what is Rava teaching us? We learn in a Mishnah in 6b with regard to two sets of witnesses who testified that one person killed another. Therefore, if one of the sets of witnesses are found to be a set of conspiring witnesses, he, the accused, and they, the conspiring witnesses, are executed by the court, and the second set of witnesses is exempt. The accused is executed because the testimony of the witnesses who were not rendered conspiring witnesses remains unchallenged. The first set of witnesses clearly is executed because they were rendered conspiring witnesses. Clearly, conspiring witnesses may be executed even though they testified against a guilty person who was sentenced to death, provided that their testimony was delivered before he was sentenced. The Gemara answers, it was the latter clause of this halacha, teaching that it is not so with regard to the verdict, that contains a novel element, and therefore it is necessary for Rabbi to teach it. And in the context of teaching the latter halacha, he taught the first case as well. The latter clause is, if two witnesses came on Tuesday and said, on Sunday, so-and-so was sentenced. If two witnesses testified on Tuesday that a person who was sentenced to death in another court on Sunday, and the two others testified that the first set was with him elsewhere on Sunday, but that person was sentenced on Shabbat Eve or Monday, first set is not executed, as when they testified that they had witnessed his sentencing, he had already been sentenced to death. And Sefer Shoftim, Hilchot Eidah 9:2, to death in a certain court, and two other witnesses came and said, "On Sunday you were with us elsewhere, and you could not have witnessed the verdict in that court. Shabbat Eve, the same so-and-so that executed was sentenced to death. First of witnesses is not executed. Moreover, even if the second set of witnesses said on Monday the same so-and-so was sentenced to death, the first set of witnesses is not executed, as at the time they testified against him on Tuesday, the man was already liable to be executed, and it is as though they conspired to kill a dead man." The Gemara adds, and likewise the same halacha that applies with regard to witnesses who testify about one who is sentenced to death applies to the matter of payments of a fine. The reason is that even if the incident occurred as they said, the accused can exempt himself from payment of the fine if he admits his liability. That is not the case with regard to testimony that one owes another person money, because once the other witnesses come, so that he is liable, there is no difference whether it transpired in one day or another. Nor can one say, as he can in the case of capital law, that ultimately the accused might not be executed, as the witnesses in case of monetary law are not cross-examined as thoroughly as they are in case of capital law, said the Ritva. The Gemara explains, if two witnesses came and said, on Sunday this person stole and then slaughtered or sold. If two witnesses testified on Tuesday that on Sunday a person stole an animal and then either slaughtered it or sold it and was sentenced, the two others testified that the first set was with him elsewhere on Sunday, but he was sentenced on Shabbat Eve, or even if they said that he stole the animal and then slaughtered or sold it on Sunday and was sentenced on Monday, the first set is not liable to pay the fine, as the thief was already liable to pay the fine when they testified that they witnessed his sentencing. The same applies to all similar cases in Rambam Sefer Shoftim in Hilchot Eidat 19.2. An ox or a lamb, thereby rendering him liable to pay a fine of 4 or 5 times the value of the stolen animal. See Exodus 21:37. And then 2 other witnesses came and said to the first set of witnesses, on Sunday you were with us elsewhere, but on Monday this same person stole and then slaughtered or sold an ox or a lamb. The first set of witnesses paid the accused 4 or 5 times the value of the stolen animal. This is because at the time that, according to their testimony, he stole the animals, he had not yet stolen. Moreover, even if the second set of witnesses said it was early on Shabbat Eve that he stole and then slaughtered or sold the animals, the first set of witnesses paid the accused the amount of the fine he would have had to pay, as at the time that they testified, the accused man had not yet been found liable for payment by the court, and he could have admitted his guilt and exempted himself from paying the fine. They conspired to render him liable. But if the 2 witnesses came on Tuesday and said, on Sunday this person stole and then slaughtered or sold an ox or lamb that was sentenced to pay a fine of 4 or 5 times the value of the stolen animal, and the other 2 witnesses came and said, on Sunday you were with us, but that person stole and slaughtered or sold an ox or lamb that was sentenced on Shabbat Eve, the first set of witnesses are exempt from payment. Moreover, even if the second set of witnesses said on Sunday he stole or then slaughtered or sold an ox or lamb, corroborating testimony of the first, and on Monday he was sentenced to pay the fine, first set of witnesses do not pay the accused. This is because at the time when they testified against him on Tuesday, they had already been found liable for payment by the court, and therefore they are not conspiring witnesses. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Yehuda says that if a single set of witnesses rendered numerous set of witnesses, all of whom testify that one person killed another, conspiring witnesses, this situation is a conspiracy, and only the first set of conspiring witnesses is executed. And in conclusion, and so we conclude Daf 5a. The enduring lesson here, my dear viewers, is a cornerstone of Jewish jurisprudence. The Torah's pursuit of justice is absolute, yet exquisitely nuanced. The law of the Eden Zomim serves as a powerful deterrent, reinforcing that truth is paramount in the courtroom. It teaches that swift and preemptive justice is required to punish those who would subvert the system, but once the sentence has been executed, the legal system priority shifts. We are reminded that divine justice holds the final reckoning, but on earth the Torah provides a path to protect the innocent and to ensure the integrity of the judicial process. We're here to see you tomorrow, and take care. Bye.